Jake, his girlfriend Emily, and their friend Matt decided to escape their busy city lives and spend a peaceful weekend in a remote cabin they found online. Nestled deep in the woods of the Pacific Northwest, the cabin was miles away from civilization, promising tranquility and a break from their hectic routines. As they drove up the winding, isolated road, the dense forest around them seemed to close in, the trees towering like ancient guardians. The GPS signal cut out, and the only way to reach the cabin was by following a hand-drawn map provided by the owner. Jake, who was driving, joked, "This is exactly how horror movies start, right?" They arrived at the cabin just as the sun was setting, casting an eerie orange glow through the trees. The cabin was charming but old, with creaky wooden floors and dim lighting. It felt like stepping back in time. Matt noticed some strange symbols carved into the doorframe but shrugged them off as old folk art. The first night was uneventful, filled with laughter, campfire stories, and marshmallows. However, things started to get strange the next morning. Emily found a rusty, old key on the kitchen counter that none of them had noticed before. "Where do you think this goes?" she asked, holding it up to the others. They searched the cabin but found nothing. Later that day, while exploring the surrounding woods, Matt stumbled upon an old, overgrown shed. The door was padlocked, but the rusty key fit perfectly. Inside, they discovered dusty old tools, jars filled with something unidentifiable, and a book bound in leather, covered in the same strange symbols they had seen on the cabin door. Curious, Jake opened the book. It was filled with handwritten notes in a language none of them understood. But the drawings, grotesque figures, strange rituals, and what looked like sacrifices sent a chill down their spines. Emily insisted they leave the shed and go back to the cabin. That night, strange things began happening. The wind howled outside, but it was eerily silent inside. The fire in the fireplace extinguished itself, and the temperature dropped suddenly. Emily heard whispers, but when she asked Jake and Matt, they heard nothing. The tension grew, and sleep was impossible. Around midnight, they heard heavy footsteps outside the cabin, crunching through the fallen leaves. Jake peeked through the window but saw nothing. The footsteps circled the cabin, closer and closer, until they suddenly stopped at the front door. The doorknob rattled, and then there was a loud knock. Jake grabbed a poker from the fireplace, and they cautiously approached the door. "Who's there?" Jake called out, but there was no response. The knocking continued, growing louder and more insistent. Emily, shaking with fear, whispered, "Don't open it." But Jake, trying to be brave, slowly turned the doorknob. The door creaked open to reveal nothing. The porch was empty, but the knocking continued, now coming from the back of the cabin. They rushed to the back door, but again, there was nothing there. Panicked, they barricaded themselves inside the cabin, but the knocking persisted, coming from every direction: the windows, the walls, even the roof. Emily screamed as the whispers grew louder, almost as if they were coming from inside her own head. Suddenly, the power went out, plunging them into darkness. Only the faint glow of their phones lit the room. The knocking stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence. They huddled together, too terrified to move. Then, out of the silence, a voice, deep and menacing, whispered, "You shouldn't have opened the book." The front door burst open with a force that sent them scrambling. A cold wind swept through the cabin, extinguishing their phones' lights. In the pitch black, they could hear the voice again, now all around them, chanting in that unknown language from the book. Jake, Emily, and Matt were never seen again. The next group who rented the cabin found it abandoned, with all their belongings still inside. But on the kitchen counter, there was a dusty old key and a book bound in leather, waiting for its next readers. The authorities ruled their disappearance as just another unsolved mystery of the woods, but the locals knew better. They warned anyone who asked never to go looking for that cabin, for those who did were never seen again. The cabin was now a part of the forest's dark secrets, and anyone who stumbled upon it would meet the same fate.